What's up, y'all? It's Women History Month. So this month I will be taking over the helm of the Wright Quality podcast. I am your host, Ashley Wright the First, and that is my would it be this way?
Nope, it'll be the other way.
The
Yep.
opposite way.
Yeah,
And
point
that
the opposite
is
way. It's really weird. You got to point the opposite way. It's it's
yeah.
it's it's a lot. But what's going on, y'all? I am Stephen Claus second, and yeah, man, I'm just following Ashley Wright the First here. About to get into the right quality per usual and get to it, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good topics all around. But today we'll talk about the All-Star game. So the All-Star game is tomorrow on Sunday. We're recording this on Saturday. But we want to talk about some of the teams and, what LeBron and KD picked. So, Steve, what do you think about this year's All-Star game and what the captains were able to put together from the rosters?
Okay, listen, because so we talked about before like the last 2 years, it's been lopsided because I don't know what vendetta Giannis had, but Giannis just seemed to not want to pick the best players on the board, really. But LeBron cheats. I don't know how. I can't prove it, but LeBron consistently cheats because what I don't understand is how do you get this starting five? Like, how does this work? Because Giannis, Steph, Luca,
Mhm.
Jokic, that's your starting five with LeBron James.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What? You just about got everything, really. It's probably one of the most skilled fives. I
It's weird because it's like we're talking about these all stars and what team is better. Like all of these players are mad talented, but it is like Brian do be cheating somehow, some way.
because like don't get me wrong, look at this other starting five. Is well, KD's obviously out, but you got Tatum, Kawhi, Kyrie, and Embiid and Bradley Beal. Clearly a very formidable, opponent. But like still, like what? It's just it's crazy. But I mean, all in all, I think the teams are relatively even. I mean, we talk about that five for LeBron, but all around, I think the All Stars have been picked pretty even. And I mean, I think we've all seen that the All Star game kind of presents different opportunities for different players. I mean, sometimes you have players come in that it's their first time or they're relatively unknown, at least in the All Star world, and they come in and kind of like, have a killing. Or, it comes down to the stars. And sometimes some of the stars just go off because they feeling it that day. So I think the game in itself will be how the games typically are. It'll be pretty much a free for all for the first 3 quarters. And then when the fourth quarter comes, it's really going to be about who's hot, who's, going to have the most impact on the game, and they're going to try to win. I think it'll be fun to see. I'm curious to see how some of the younger players and some of the first time all stars fit in this format, because I think we've seen where players do well during the season and obviously fit well in their teams, and that's why they can be productive the way they can. But I think we've all been there. Like if you've been to an open gym and you playing with and everybody on the court is talented, like how do you find your own shots in that regard? Not that anybody cares that they will pass it up, but it's still the idea that like everybody can go get their own bucket. So it'll be kind of interesting to see like if they kind of make their presence felt. But oh no, teams are even. I wish KD was playing. But at the end of the day, obviously they much rather have him ready for the playoffs and the championship run they plan on going on. So
Yeah, that's true. But the teams are not even. I'm going I'm going with Team LeBron. It's just
if,
overwhelming.
if I'm picking one, then yes, I'm going with Team LeBron. But I say even in the sense of like you said, everybody's talented. So even with the star power that, because also mind you, let's just let's just look back at this for a second because Durant's bench now
Mhm.
Durant's bench has Devin Booker, James Harden, Levine, Zion Williamson, and Donovan Mitchell. So this not too shabby. And Bron's bench is like it's cool, but I don't know. Cause
Mhm.
it's like you got Dame, give you that. You got Chris Paul, obviously. Um, you got JB, but I don't know what JB looks like in the All-Star game, to be completely honest. Uh, you got George Paul. Um,
George Michael.
You can, you got Sabonis, and then you got Simmons. So it's like you got Gobert too. But again, Gobert, I don't know how Gobert's style of play fits in an All-Star game. But it, I guess it's hard to call him uneven just from the sense of it's really about flow of game. Like everybody on all the rosters can go get a bucket. All of them are bucket getters. So I think it just comes down to who they decide to play in that last quarter. Really. Also, if Dame's not in the game, I'm going to be confused. That's all I'm going to say. If Dame's not in the game to end the game for Team LeBron, I'm sorry. Somebody got to go. Somebody from the starting line going to have to go. I don't know. Dame should be there, though. That's all I'm going to say about that. Yeah, y'all will be watching this after the fact, but I'm really interested to see what this like All-Star day looks like, this All-Star night, like how this all flows together, especially when players are involved in multiple things. Yeah, should be very interesting to say the least.
Yeah. All right, so moving on, we're still talking about two All-Stars in Jokic and Giannis, but the question has been raised. Giannis is a back-to-back MVP winner, and Nikola Jokic has been leading the Denver Nuggets for quite some time now, averaging some pretty high numbers similar to Giannis. So a couple of people were wondering, like, what about Jokic is so different from Giannis that Jokic isn't getting the same recognition or MVP talk? What do you think?
Honestly, I don't know. The tweet you sent me mentioned, the market size where Denver is bigger, obviously. It's not that Jokic isn't putting up the numbers, and it's not that Jokic doesn't have essentially the same impact on his team that Giannis does on his. So I'm not really sure why Jokic necessarily seems to be kind of like falling under the radar in that regard, or at least not being. But it's weird because I wouldn't say Jokic isn't in the same conversation as Giannis. I mean, regardless of the two MVPs, I think if you were to put Jokic in the same conversation, nobody would be like, "Why are you doing that?" Or how could you think that? So it's weird. I think it might just be because Giannis's story,
Mm-hmm.
not only getting to the league but within the league is different and has been profiled more than
Mm-hmm.
Jokic's story. I think that's really the main difference. I mean, you think well, both are foreign, but Giannis, the transformation, because I think maybe people might have assumed that Jokic had this skill set when he entered the league, right? So he just kind of evolved and got better, if that makes sense. But Giannis literally transformed,
Mm-hmm.
his body and his game from when he first entered the league. So I think that's why I think you just see Giannis getting more attention um, than Jokic does. But I think anybody that's watching them or that has kept up with both of their careers wouldn't wouldn't look at both of them or look at their comparison and be like, yeah, I don't see how those two could be in the same conversation.
No, I agree. Like you said, it's their story. And if you remember when Kobe was giving out these different like accomplishments and goals for people to look forward to, he told Giannis MVP. So that put a lot of us as fans, spectators, media on high alert. Let's watch Giannis and see what he can do and see if he really deserves this MVP award that Kobe thinks that, he should be able to obtain. And I think that also has part to do with it as well. And like you said, their story, like with Giannis coming from Greece and, with the story about his dad and, just working hard to get to where he is, it is something that we've all, took to when Giannis was drafted. And I agree. Yeah. Jokic is not like he sucks. It's not like he doesn't deserve that conversation, but Giannis' story does have a lot to do with it.
Yeah, and I think it would be different, and especially in the last three, I want to say since 2017, 2018 season, the Bucks have been the story of the NBA. I mean, you talk about you gotta think of the trajectory of I was gonna say something about trying not to get too deep into it and be biased, but oh well, it fits with the conversation.
Yeah.
If you think about the trajectory of the Bucks from when Giannis was drafted, because Giannis gets drafted in 2013, right? If I'm not mistaken, Jabari Parker gets drafted in 2014. So at that time, the idea is that them two are supposed to be the tandem. Um, Jabari obviously, deals with injuries and he's never really able to be consistent. And somewhere in that time frame, Middleton comes over. And so they go through that stretch of time where Jabari is off and on with injuries. Like they kind of got pieces, but they really just kind of focusing on developing Giannis at that point. And they're just kind of in the middle of the pack. But if you remember, it would have been Kyrie's first year in Boston. Yes, would have been Kyrie's first year in Boston because he didn't play the whole playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But Boston got Milwaukee in the first round. And it was like a 2-7 matchup. But because Boston didn't, as a matter of fact, it was because it was bronze last year in Cleveland because Gordon Hayward got injured.
Yep.
In that game. So Gordon Hayward got injured. So he was out the whole season. And Kyrie was out the playoffs. So go back to that season. People knew then, that the Bucks were getting scary because at that point, as a 7 seed, people they took Boston 7 games in that series. So that was kind of like them coming. And then the year after that was the year you kind of really start to see them come together because if that was 2017, 2018. Then the next year is the year they had that amazing regular season and go to the conference finals. So in the last 3 years, outside of, Denver going to the conference finals last year, the story of the league has been the turnaround, of the Bucks due to the development of Giannis. So I think, like, back to the story piece, I think it's just the fact that in recent years, we've seen Giannis go 2-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, went to the conference finals. And the only knock in all of this talk has been, the dimensions of his game that he doesn't have, and the fact that, they've been stumped the last couple of times. But for the most part, it's still been about them more so than you've heard about Denver in the West because Bron came over, then Kawhi came over. So there's so many teams overshadowing Denver and Jokic at that he just doesn't get the recognition, or not even recognition, the shine in regard to people talking about him more.
Yeah, I was going to bring up that point too. Also, with Giannis winning Defensive Player of the Year and things of that nature, we don't really talk about Jokic's defensive ability, but we talk about Giannis's. You know what I mean? And I think that's honestly where they're separated in terms of offense and all that stuff. Yeah, they're similar, but defensively, they're definitely separated.
Yeah, because Jokic can't jump an inch off the ground. So there's
Right.
that.
But
But I mean, and they bring different skill sets. But yeah, I think it just ultimately comes down to marketing. So the market doesn't matter because Giannis is a player between endorsements, the commercials, all this. You're just going to see Giannis more, which in return is going to obviously, build him up past the league. And I think Jokic just hasn't left league recognition, which is probably one of the main differences. That don't have nothing to do with MVPs and everything, but also to end it, or at least I think the very, and at least in reference to MVPs, the true separation is that at least Jokic has a Murray.
mm-hmm.
And at least a lot of people consider Murray to be one of the top young guards in the league, obviously. And I think Murray being a sidekick to Jokic is like a little bit more help than Middleton being a sidekick to Giannis. And I think for that reason, sometimes what the Bucks do and it being on Giannis is a little bit more impressive than what Denver is doing with Jokic because they still have somebody like Murray, even though we've talked about his inconsistencies before. What he's capable of, I think still serves a bigger threat than I think what Middleton is capable of in the comparison context.
Yeah, I agree. So keeping the whole context of storylines and things of that nature, this made me so happy. I was so happy. Charis LeVert is on track to return this season after finding out a mass was on his kidney doing a physical, being traded from the Nets to the Indiana Pacers. If Charis is indeed able to return this season, what do you think he will bring to that team? And do you think ultimately that team will be able to make a spurt and land a playoff spot?
What he brings to the team, he brings another scoring option. He brings something, or his game allows for a lot of pressure to be taken off of Brogdon, as a ball handler, as a point guard to an extent, and as a scorer, because Brogdon's been doing a lot of scoring this season. And I feel like if he can be a true point guard, he's even more of a threat in that regard when he's not kind of looked at to be your premier scorer, especially once Oladipo left. So um yeah, I think that's what Charis brings. I mean, obviously, like, we all know that story. And we all are happy that, he got traded, because if it wasn't for that, we'd never known of this, and we would have never known how that may have manifested. So just happy to see him back. And I think they can definitely make a run. I mean, the East is not wide open, but those bottom teams are not scrubs. And the fact that they're even in a position to be fighting for the spots in the manner that they are, I think is a good thing, given that the East has been relatively dormant, especially out like past that top four for the last few years. So when you think of that bottom four being between the horn, but being between Charlotte and being between Indiana, and if Boston is falling, like in the bottom four, like none of these teams are scrubs, and so these are going to be good matchups. These are going to be relatively tough outs, might be a stretch, but I just don't think there's going to be any running over of
Yeah.
any teams, because they're all solid. So I think Indiana either could be in that mix, or if they do go on the spurt, they could potentially end up being 4 or 5, just because of how close that race is for all those spots. So I think they make the playoffs regardless. Where, I don't know, but I think they have a great shot at making the playoffs. And depending on matchups, they probably give a couple teams a really good scare. So
Yeah, I definitely I agree with that too. Levert, like you said, I think with him being able to not necessarily play the role that Oladipo played, but both of them have similar playing styles. So he will be a great fit for a team like Indiana. And like you said, with Malcolm being able to play that true point guard position, I see no reason why Charis wouldn't be able to thrive in that role.
yeah, no, I agree. And I think this would be the first opportunity. We said this when he got traded, but I think this would be the first opportunity for him to really be able to thrive, and him to be in a position where he is probably, or can become, your first offensive option,
Mhm.
because he has the skill set and the talent to be that. So I would love to see him get an opportunity to showcase what he can do with it.
Yep, yep, I agree. So still on the, line of trades, the trade deadline is coming up, and recently Blake Griffin was bought out of his contract by the Pistons.
Yeah,
And, amongst that list of teams that he may be looking at is of course the Brooklyn Nets. So if Blake Griffin decides to sign with the Brooklyn Nets, who already have the tremendous big three that they have, what do you think that does for that team?
I'm torn. Okay, I'm torn because a part of me would love to see Lob City reunited.
Yeah.
Granted, it's not Lob City, necessarily anymore. At least not as exciting, maybe, as it used to be, but still there, could still be very viable. I just don't know if that's the fit for him to be the best fit. I Because what necessarily does Blake Griffin offer you that you're not getting?
That's
It-
a very valid question. That's a valid question. I know Blake has been working on extending his game beyond the 3-point line. It's been less of the dunk show that we grew accustomed to
right.
years back of Blake Griffin. But I don't, we talked about this before the show. We don't think that he'll be a starter. I think him coming off the bench would add a lot of energy, I think, especially with a point guard like Kyrie and especially with James. We've seen the type of passes that he's been capable of throwing and things of that nature. I think then the excitement will come because, James was throwing lobs to Clint Capella.
He
So
was.
what can James do with the Blake Griffin who can jump out the gym?
Yes, I agree. I guess my thing is the Nets already have their Blake Griffin-esque type of player, and it's Jeff Green. Jeff Green offers you everything that Blake Griffin is going to bring you. And on top of that, Jeff Green probably is going to give you more defensively than Blake is going to give you. And we've all said that Nets don't really need no more offense. They
Right.
got that covered.
Right.
Um, I don't think the signing would be bad. I just wonder because that team not that's going to get blown up, but that team's going to get switched around in the offseason anyway. They're not going to keep everybody. So it's just a matter, I guess, of me. Is Brooklyn the best fit? And is what's the best fit is the biggest question for Blake.
Right.
And secondly, what role is he really going to be okay with playing? Is Blake going to be like Melo was in OKC when he first got there? Is Blake going to be like, I'm not coming off the bench, but that's the best role for you. That's the best fit for you.
But honestly, the difference is, Blake has these options. You know what I mean? Melo didn't have options per se. And it's like, Blake, if you decide to sign with Brooklyn, I refuse to believe that you believe you're going to have a major role on that team. On that team. Seriously.
I mean, these players are entitled, man. And I don't necessarily mean that in the most negative way, but mentally it's hard to feel like I've been starting in this league for 10 years. And you tell me just because I'm going to a team with players that I mean, yeah, they better than me, but like, they just still feel like I mean, like what you bring me over here for if I'm not starting? Like if they're a starter, like if that's been their identity, their role, their entire career. But I guess that's also Blake's mindset because like is Blake in the mindset of I'm trying to go to a team. I will hope Blake is not in the mindset of trying to get his rocks off. Like honestly, your time for that has passed. It just has. Like, are you trying to win a championship? Like, you trying to win a championship, then you should be going somewhere and just accepting whatever role you feel like you can benefit in. Which don't mean you ain't gonna get a lot of minutes. It's just that you're not gonna start. You're not gonna get the same amount of touches. So you may not be given the same level of productivity, but you can still be efficient and effective. But like I said, we don't really know where Blake is in that regard. Blake's barely played. So I think that's the biggest key. If he goes to Brooklyn, though, I've lost faith in the league at this point because
Why?
okay, that's a stretch. That's I haven't lost faith in the league, but the easiness that some of these teams can be put together is it's not concerning. I wonder what it's going to lead to because we've seen it become increasingly easier and become increasingly common, which I don't know. Like it's just like
I
it
kind of get what you're saying because it's like, we had one good season where it was like the season of the duos, and then that kind of blew up with like this Brooklyn trade. And, now we're back to big threes.
right. Like duos are fine. Duos have been the identity of the league, really, if you think about it. When you get to like before Miami, we had never seen nothing like three of I mean, one could argue that during that time, Bosch, if you weren't considering Bosch a top 10 player, he was on the cusp. Bosch was probably top 20, top 15. I think we all made our jokes and everything, but people disrespect the power forward that Bosch was. Like Bosch was a killer.
Um,
So um, but when that becomes normal, how exactly do you expect to beat that?
mhm.
Like, yes, they lost to Dallas, and that was a whole chemistry issue and whatnot. But how do you expect to beat a team that has three top five scorers, let alone players in the league? Then on top of that, you give them a center like DeAndre Jordan, you give them a player like Blake Griffin, you surround them with a shooter like Joe Harris, and what are you supposed to do with that? Like if I'm a team that has one superstar, or if I'm a team that has maybe a great starting unit, but I don't really have no bench, what am I supposed to do with that?
Mhm.
And it's just like okay, we can all wait for the regular season just to see the same two teams play in the championship. It's trash, though. It's honestly trash. And that's not to say that there isn't competition there. I don't know how I feel about it, man. I just feel like it's different. It's different from the league a lot of us grew up watching. Um, and I think it just changes the narrative of a lot of people. There are so many players that are forgotten because you just don't see them. I mean, think of somebody who is 5 years younger than us. and didn't start watching the league until late 2000s,
Until that Miami Big Three was formed.
until that Miami Big Three, when they really, really started paying attention, maybe.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Like, there's so many. That's not how the league supposed to be, man. It's not supposed to be a walkthrough. It's not supposed to be a piece of cake. Before a lot of teams, especially in the last decade or so, it's been like that. And the
Mm,
only reason I don't throw Golden State in that conversation because Golden State is the only team outside of signing KD that
right.
did that organically.
Yeah.
Teams aren't doing that anymore. Teams aren't building through drafts. Teams aren't building through smart, like, trades like, oh, we got him off this trade during the trade deadline, or oh, we signed this free agent. Like, no, everything is like, oh, we're gonna have this player talk to this player and want to play with each other. And it's just like, I don't know. There's no mystique. There's no mystique anymore.
Yeah.
Everything's predictable. I mean, we still get good basketball. I don't know. I'm getting off my soapbox. It's just
That's all right, Steve. It's okay. But I want to talk about another big, that could be moved before the deadline or on the deadline. Andre Drummond, who is currently with the Cavaliers, and we talked about him before the show too. Andre is that type of big who's kind of gotten the short end of the stick since being in the league. So much talent, but on teams that don't necessarily have the resources to build around him.
uh,
If Drummond were to be moved, where do you think he would best fit?
I don't know. That's the thing because what team what team needs a big? That's really the question. I don't know how many teams in the league are truly in dire need of a big right now.
If
Starting big at that.
Boston,
Yeah,
Boston.
yeah, but I'm gonna go on a limb and say Boston doesn't have the bread to.
Mhm.
Well, if they don't have the bread or they don't have they don't have the assets to make that trade.
Yeah,
Not without losing a key member of their core.
which I think would be Kimba. I think he would be on the chopping block.
I have that. First of all, that will be the dumbest trade because
It would, but I think that's what they would give up. But however, we're also talking about Danny Ainge, who seems to, you know, that man, Danny Ainge is one of the best GMs.
yeah, he's pulled together some things.
Yeah.
So
No, I don't put it past him being able to land Andre Drummond while still keeping Kimba, JT,
at
and
all. Well, I mean, we know JT ain't going nowhere. We know JB ain't going nowhere. We know that. I would imagine you want to keep somebody like Smart. My only thing about Kimba being on the chopping block is one, are you willing to give up on Kimba yet? And two, um, that trade specifically with Cleveland wouldn't make any sense because all Cleveland has are guards and bigs. Why
Mhm.
would you trade Kimba over there and you already have your point guard in Sexton and you have Darius Garland? Why would you do that? Like, I'm still kind of surprised they chose Jared Allen as their big over Drummond because Drummond's not old, he's not washed. Drummond's still a walking double double. So the decision to move Drummond as a, I mean, I guess you make your choice, but
But honestly, that tells me that they're keeping him healthy to move him. Because
yeah,
what other reason? Nothing else makes sense.
I'm just mad because Drummond's on my fantasy team and he's been sitting for a month, so that's been hurting me.
Yeah.
But no, I guess I'm just surprised because we haven't heard talk about it. Like we know he's not playing. We know they plan on trading him, but we haven't heard any progress on
Mhm.
any trades or any teams that want him, any teams that's looking for him. There hasn't been a word about it. So what happens if we get to the trade deadline and if that deal doesn't go through, what does that look like? Because are they going to buy him
Maybe
out?
they buy him out, right? Yeah.
So is it too much to buy him out? It might be. So I'm
Mhm.
not sure. I don't know. I I, I don't know about Drummond, but again, I agree. Like I don't know why he's gotten the short end of the stick. I don't know why he hasn't been able to find his way to a team that can use him.
Mhm.
Mind you, Drummond could go to Golden State. Drummond could go. Drummond could have. Drummond could have.
Imagine Drummond and James Wiseman on the same team as Steph.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's it's like that.
It's like that.
Like
Um, I think, and Drummond is a flexible player, which is why it kind of confused me because Drummond's not like your Gobert to me.
mhm.
I don't. You can't play too many people with Gobert in terms of bigs, at least. But Drummond, I feel like you can play Drummond with another big, and you could have a very similar DeMarcus Anthony Davis situation with a player like Drummond because he's flexible. He can be your big, he can be your four, not a stretch, but like if you put him with a stretch big, things like that could work. So I seem like he's a player that offers a lot, but I don't necessarily understand why he kind of hasn't been granted that opportunity, or teams don't seem interested in utilizing him in that capacity. Kind of confuses me, to be completely honest.
Yeah, yeah. It confuses me too. I don't know. Like you said, he's not a washed player. He's still fairly young. It's weird. But we were talking about Boston, and we want to replace this for the one gotta go. Boston has a duo similar to the duo in LA for the Clippers: Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George. I think the question was, which duo would you rather have to win a championship?
Or just having the playoffs.
Just have in the playoffs. Which duo would you rather have to have in the playoffs? So I'm asking you, Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, or Kawhi Leonard and Paul George in the playoffs?
This this sucks. This sucks, man. Well, one, I hate that we're always putting Kawhi and Paul George in these situations.
Yeah,
Um,
it's easy. It's easy to put them in this situation.
it is. It is. I think it's so hard because I don't want to diminish what Kawhi has done. So I don't want to sit here and solely focus on Paul George's shortcomings
Right.
and make it seem like that's the sole reason why I wouldn't want them, because I would want Kawhi down the stretch. He's proven himself. Um, but Tatum and Brown are coming, man. Like they're gonna have their time. They're gonna have their stretch. I think once they really finalize what that team needs to look like for optimal success for them, they're gonna have a run of their own. So it's kind of hard to choose because I feel like it's a preference thing. But if I had to, I'm probably still gonna go Kawhi and PG. Um, Mainly because of Kawhi. But the scary thing is, if you get regular PG, if you get regular season PG in the playoffs, or any shell of him for that matter, that's better than what he's shown in the last couple of years. This is almost a stupid question. If that's the case,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just like we're all really just waiting to see if Paul George can be who he is in the regular season in the playoffs when it matters. But I'd still have to go with them, even though I love Tatum and Brown as a duo, and they've proven themselves in the playoffs. So it's not like they're unproven or haven't been. I mean, they've played in 2 or 3 conference finals in the last 2 years. Yeah, I think it's 2. The last, well, 2 out of the last 3 they played in. So they've been there. They've been just as far as Paul George has. So what can you say? But I mean, that would be my personal choice. What about yours?
Yeah, I'm choosing Kawhi and PG. Regardless of PG being able to show up in the playoffs, they lost 3-4 last season to the Nuggets, but Kawhi was still, playing fairly well. I don't think Kawhi was playing to the immense potential that we've seen Kawhi play to, but it would be dumb to go against a man who was able to be traded to a team and lead that team to a finals. And I don't feel like that finals was a cakewalk either. Milwaukee was a really great team. The 76ers, he only won because of that game winning shot. You know what I mean? So it wasn't easy to get that trophy. And so I think picking against him would kind of be a little,
And that Sixers team, arguably, I think the Sixers team is better than a lot of people get him credit for.
right.
But that's the year they had Jimmy. So I don't like, yeah, beating that team, and I mean he got away with a travel, but that's
Yeah.
But beating that team is was definitely a stamp in a moment for him, especially. And then, to win 4 games straight against Milwaukee, a team that hadn't lost back-to-back games that entire year.
Mhm.
And the defense, like, and that team had to make adjustments. Like, they didn't just go out there and win because they were the better team. They had to make adjustments to stop Giannis, and they did. So yeah, it's kind of hard to bet against that. And with Kawhi being the only proven in a sense of actually getting into the finals and winning multiple finals, yeah, can't really go against that. You can't, yeah, can't go against it. I wouldn't, at least.
So moving along to another topic, we were talking about players that were averaging 30 points per game in the month of February. And on that list was Dame Dollar. And, recently it's come to light that Dame has actually been dealing with some serious situations,
Mm.
in the past year and a half, losing a lot of people around him, around in his circle, and still playing at a very high level. And you were talking about before the show people discussing Dame having to, maybe leave Portland to win a championship when organizations such as Portland have been loyal to, the players that they've drafted. So what do you have to say about, the level that Dame has been playing at, especially with all of the things that he's been going through and all the talk from us fans and, the media about possibly leaving Portland?
Yeah, I don't like that. I guess the one thing I don't like about the situation is that Dame is already really underappreciated, and Dame is already really under the radar, and people don't respect just what he brings to the game in general. I feel like so. Then when you add to that his narrative is only seen in the perspective of, oh, he's not going to win a chip in Portland, or oh, he's not gonna this, that, and the third. I just feel like it's a one-sided perspective. I feel like we all because of what I just said about the league, we all see these players and we're like, oh, we need to get them with a better player. Oh, we need to get them with another star, and then they'll be able to win a championship. Da, da, da. No, no, well, no, that's not the only way. And I feel like for Dame, if people really, and as much access that we have, and as much as people claim to pay attention to these athletes' lives, if you pay attention to Dame, you would know Dame probably one of the realest in the league when it comes to just like what he's about, like like what he does. Like he's not one like he's not a league dude.
Right.
He's not a dude that I don't even know how to describe it. I think Stephen A was describing it, but like he's not one of these dudes that's he's not being pushed by the league. He's not trying to make himself or put himself in a position to be pushed by the league. He plays for his team. He's loyal to them. He takes care of his business. He does his little Hulu commercials where he raps, and he do what he do. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like he in his lane, and he balls out. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. It sucks that he can be dealing with all the things that he's been dealing with, still leading his team and having to get on the court and play through that, and then still hear what he has to hear in terms of basically people saying he's wasting his career. So I just think it sucks and it's unfortunate, and I just wish the mindset was different about what players need to win. Um, but I mean that ain't nothing I'm ever gonna be able to control. That's just a thought. But yeah, that's kind of my response to us learning what he's all been dealing with the past year and a half.
Yeah, it definitely sucks. And, this is a prime example of players have lives too.
Yeah.
Players aren't just players, they're also humans. And like you said, it's really a slap in the face to Dame because it's like, yeah, we talk about Dame and Brad Beal and all these other players that should leave their organizations, but these are the organizations that have been, loyal. And like you mentioned it before too, it's different for Dame because it's not like Portland hasn't tried to build around this man. Portland is just a place where, free agents haven't, you know, desired to live in. So I agree. I think, a lot of that talk has to cease, especially knowing, what Dame has been going through. Um, but switching gears, we wanted to it's the middle of the season, and we've had some time to evaluate players and watch what different players have been able to do. And we wanted to provide the listeners and viewers with our all NBA first team lineups. So I'm gonna let you go first with yours.
Yeah. No, I actually I think I did this earlier this week. But if I'm not mistaken, who did I say? I said Dame, Harden, Bron. I think I said Bron, Embiid, and Jokic. But Jokic could be switched out with Giannis. Either one of them could be in there. I just said Jokic first, but that is hard because I feel like you can either go Dame. Well, I went my five is my five. I have no problem with that being my five. But if I was gonna have another guard, it would be Steph. If I was gonna have another forward, it would be Giannis. So either Giannis and Jokic switch out, and Dame and Steph can switch out. But my five is my five. I think just undoubtedly those players have just been destroying the league this year. Numbers show for it. For the most part, all of their teams are is a testament to their year as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. Our lineup is actually identical. I chose Dame, Harden, Bron. I put Giannis, and
Mm.
that's Embiid.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, like I said, we talked about it, and almost all of these players have averaged 30 points per game in the month of February. And like you said, these teams are in prime positions, especially when it comes to playoff seeding. It's hard to argue why someone wouldn't be in that lineup. But I would, throw Steph in there. I would throw Jokic's name in there. But yeah, for now, I think that's a solid first team.
Yeah, I would say those are the only two. The reason KD's not in the conversation is just because he hasn't been able to play as consistently. And I mean, the fact that at least like I don't think it's serious injuries here. I mean, I would be very careful with him as well. And I don't think obviously his goal and his concern is not MVP and it's not any making any team or whatever. He's trying to win a championship, so that's what they're shooting for. But yeah, out of people who have been playing consistently. I don't know if you can really go another direction, than that five, to be completely honest. Yeah, I mean you can make arguments, but I just don't think you can name five players or any other players than those five that have had the impact that they've had. So yeah.
Yep. So the moment has come. Our favorite, I guess, segment of the show,
Mhm.
moment of clarity. So, do you have a moment of clarity prepared for us?
Do I have one prepared? No, I'm about to think of one though. Because there's always something that we have to know why about, why are people, just feeling like this, thinking like this, saying these things, doing these things, etc. Um, Something's gonna come to me. Uh
Well, here-
why? I got it, I think. Why do we think there is a rift in like the old school era of players and the new school era of players, even more so than I feel like we've seen in the last decade or so. I,
Mhm.
I feel like just recently, maybe like in the past couple of years, we've seen that distinction or that separation start to become a little bit more clear. Um, and I'm not really sure why that is. I mean, we could point to a lot of things like different perspectives, the league being different, the league having different goals, things of that nature. But at the end of the day, the fact that that distinction is becoming really clear just kind of it bothers me because if for whatever reason they start to lose that relationship or you start having older players, either if you stop them from giving the advice or if the younger players are not allowing for old players to get any advice, I feel like there's just a lot that's being lost there and a lot that will be missing for what the future generations will still need. Because even if you're talking about players who haven't seen, older players in the flesh or didn't grow up watching them, used to me, that's just still knowing the history of the game, So if that relationship isn't there, I don't really know how I feel about that, but that's kind of like I don't know why that's happening though, and it feels weird that it's happening now in of all times when it could have.
Right. I think honestly though, it's a sense of older players feeling like, better than. I
Mm,
don't know if you recall LeBron, he made some comments where he was like, I forgot what he said verbatim, but he was basically like, the guys under me. You know, it came off as like you think you're better than me. And I think players like Shaq, who's always boasting about, how many championships they've had and, I'm the most dominant. While you are able to say all of those things because he's backed it up,
Yeah.
it rubs younger players the wrong way. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of where the disconnect comes from.
Yeah, I think it's a generational thing as well. I think if you think about just the way the league was like, I don't know if you could name me a player from the 80s and 90s that wasn't cocky,
Right.
especially if they were a champion, especially if they were a star. But that was also just kind of like the that was how things were back
Right. It's
then.
the era of trash talk, all that. It was just a lot of thicker skin.
Yeah, a lot of bravado. You heard more and you saw more, so it was normal.
Yeah.
The league changes, as everybody likes to say, the league got a little bit softer. Can't really trash talk as much. Definitely not as much as you could have before.
Mhm.
And so there's not that edge there. So I would imagine that in that when you're getting advice from older players who still have that mentality from back then, who aren't going to sugarcoat anything, they're not going to hold anything back. I think a lot of players just can't handle it. And I mean, you also, I don't know how many players dealt with coaches that got into them or dealt with coaches that really got on them or challenged them. At least in that capacity, because coaching styles are different. So that, I mean, you just never know what a player is accustomed to, and sometimes players don't like being being told that they're not something or that they aren't as good as what they are. Whatever the advice or the critique might be. Uh, but I just feel like that's naive of them not to be open minded to somebody who's played this game, longer than you or as long as you. But yeah, I feel like it's two sides to it. But I just hope that relationship doesn't get to a point where young players aren't learning anything, or they're not able to take away anything from the OGs. That's really it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So for my moment of clarity, it's a little bit lighter. The Rockets went on a 12-game losing streak, and these social media managers for like these teams and corporations are so hilarious. So the Rockets tweeted, "We're in Spain, but the S is silent," and I love when like I love when people do stuff like that because it's just so stupid. Like it's so stupid, and it made me think like this team is like definitely gonna be in Cancun somewhere, when the playoffs start. But then it's just I don't know. Maybe I thought about it too hard, but I just thought it was hilarious. I thought it was
Look,
hilarious.
it is hilarious, but it's like we're in Spain, but the S is silent. I'm crying. Honestly, look, no, to be completely honest, if we're seeing social media creators, not creators, if we're seeing social media managers now for these teams, they're probably our age.
Yeah.
So when you start seeing teams, like first off, the fact like when March first happened and all these sports outlets start posting March Madness by Future, I
Mhm.
said, where y'all do this at?
Yeah.
What is this?
But what was hilarious to me is I think it was ESPN. They actually posted a picture of Two Chains.
I saw that. I was crying. They said Atlanta rapper with dreadlocks. Cool. We're going
Yeah.
first picture we see.
Yeah.
Horrible. Horrible.
Mhm.
That's why representation matters. But but yeah, no, I think that's is definitely hilarious. And I think that it's good though. I think that's a way for these professional teams that otherwise really wouldn't be in touch with what's going on digitally. Like, and I mean that's how we're all communicating things digitally. So it's good. I hope we get more young people and more young people that like are really in tune with the culture. And I don't want to limit that to a race, but I mean, if you're talking about a minority person or whatever the case may be, somebody that's in tune with the culture that can bridge the gap between like what you do, your world that everybody follows, but doesn't really know how to communicate with you about, and vice versa. So keep the jokes coming, keep the laughs coming. You know what I'm saying? So can't wait to see more of those horrible, horrible jokes and puns. But I'm here for them.
Yep. Yep. Well, y'all, that has been another episode of the Right Quality podcast. Steve, is there anything you would like to add?
No, man. Make sure y'all, if y'all are following the, well, if y'all not following the page, do that at TWQ Podcast. Make sure y'all are following Ashley as well. Personally, I believe it's at the Ashley W, if I'm not mistaken. Um,
Yes. You
also, underscore. Also follow sports with Ashley as well because she do this. She ain't do this. She true to this. You know what I'm saying? So
Period.
follow that as well. But yeah, man, y'all just stay tuned. If y'all want to talk about anything specific, let us know. If there's any I don't know questions, or questions or like any of those like one got a goals or like which player. We're here for all of that. We're always looking to answer those questions. So yeah, just shoot us that. Just stay tuned in and just share anything that you like that you feel like people need to be seeing that we're doing. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Other than that, just keep staying tuned, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Until next time.
All right, peace.